Welcome into Hoops Forum, a production of Radius Athletics and a Quick Timeout podcast. I'm Tony Miller, and joining me again this week is Randy Sherman. Big thanks to our sponsors over at 323 Sports. Your players, parents, and fans will love the 323 Sports $55 team packs. Each pack includes a short sleeve tee, long sleeve tee, performance short, and a heavyweight hoodie with your school's branding on them. To find out more about what 323 Sports can do for your program, visit 323sports.com, or you can contact a sales rep at sales@323sports.com. They'll be sure to do it right for your basketball program. We are in the home stretch of this year's hoop season, and many of you are headed into or are in playoffs currently. And so today's episode is a playoff edition of Hoops Forum. Randy, I've got a few questions for you, things that you've experienced, I'm sure.
Yeah.
And things also that I know that you've had conversations about with your ramp program. Let me start with kind of a more general question here.
Yeah.
And this can be something, again, that you've experienced, or something that maybe coaches, you're hearing them, things that they think about or things that they do.
Yeah.
But what, if anything, do you do differently in the postseason?
This is the playoff edition. I feel like I got to step it up a notch today, right? Like that's the coach speak, right? You got to step it up a notch in the playoffs, right? So, no, man, I really fought for our routines when it got to a playoff season. Just, I think that would be what was my approach, right or wrong. I just sort of like, man, if there are some things logistically and things like that may, in the playoff season that sort of force us out of our routine. Could be travel, could be, any number of things. But when I had control, the decisions that I made was just like fight for our routine. I think you hear that a lot from coaches in professional sports talking about it. This is our routine. We travel on this day. We take, this is our day off. This is our hard day or easy day, so on and so forth. So I really fought for those as close as I could, as much as I possibly could that was in my control.
I think for us, and how I've tried to go about thinking about it, while still keeping the routine the same for them, I think there's maybe a little bit more focus from me, just because I think typically you kind of know exactly who you're playing. And I think just inherently, everybody says, like, treat it like you would any other game. I personally don't necessarily feel that's always the best way to go about it, just because, I mean, it is different. There is more weightiness that goes into it. I do want to make things as normal as possible for our guys. But I do think for a coach, I think, whether that's a little bit more scouting you put into it, or, we'll talk about this a little bit later on. There's probably a pretty good chance, at least your first round opponent is probably somebody you've already played twice before. So you should know who that opponent is. And there's enough film on others that you can see what they do. And so, I think maybe for us as coaches, our level of preparation, maybe we want to be as prepared as possible.
Yeah, no doubt. We might disagree on a few things today, Tony, and that's good. I think that's healthy, because I do feel like I try, again, fight for the routines was one point I wanted to make today, and another one was like, the players know it's elimination season, right?
Yeah.
Like I don't have to talk about, we got to step it up or we got to be ready to play. I don't have to do that as a coach. I don't have to treat it differently. It goes without saying. So I tended to, just really try to fight for it to feeling as normal as it can, both in preparation, both in our routines and things like that, because like I don't have to tell you that it matters more, right? Like we don't need, that's no mystery.
Kind of with that, do practices not look any different, because you do want to keep that, but by this point in the year, what do they look like for you?
Well, crisp. We know who we are now. We've had a sample size of games to you know, learn what we're good at, what we're not good at, what we can lean into and what we can avoid. We know our rotation. We know our so really practice at this time of the year is maintenance, and it's more like, you know, just sort of like you know, get in, get better in the sort of in the extremes, because, you know, we kind of know who we are, but like if there's one or two things we can left clean up, I tried to you know, keep our conditioning up, keep our weights up, keep our legs fresh, all of those things to make sure that our performance is at the forefront, and not you know, we're not grinding anymore. We're getting in. We know exactly what our routine is, what our practice is like, and kind of you know, if there's some finer points we need to clean up, great, but crisp, shorter maybe. Yeah, that's what I tried to get to. And then also I coached in Texas, where there might be great distance you have to travel for a playoff game, because once we go one round and you kind of go another round, and it's like you're the area of you're going. I have a coach that literally as we speak is facing a playoff opponent tonight, but he's on his way to the game, and then the opponents is 629 miles apart from him.
Wow.
They're meeting at a midpoint, but you know, so there's some logistical factors that might take us out of our routine, that might disrupt our preparation. Do we need a travel day? Is there a hotel, you know, stay involved or something like that? So it's being flexible and being sort of like ready to adjust to the conditions that playoffs sometimes create.
I'll say paraphrase something that you do. This is what's worked for us. It doesn't have to be this. I don't feel like to have success, but you know, what's worked for us is that shortening, maybe down to like an hour and a half. We're actually only on the court probably for an hour. We talk maybe a little bit more on the front end and maybe even on the back end than we would typically. We're very, especially early on, we try to get a lot done, so there's not a whole lot of talking going on. But within that hour's time, I would say we probably focus more so on like micro skills than we do on skills or system.
Yeah.
Like we're working maybe a shorter segment on a ball screen to review how we're going to run the ball screen this week, or, you know, rebounding or whatever it is. And I think, like you said, it's just, you know who you are. So it allows you to kind of go back and refresh. And there's something motor connected to that motor development, and just being able to repeat a skill or do a skill well. They need to go back and review maybe some of those things that we worked on earlier in the year but haven't had enough time to, or whatever. And then we do a ton of shooting as well, and we've talked about
got to keep that sharp,
the importance of that as we head down the stretch here. So do you know, you said try to keep things as normal as possible. I had a coach ask me this morning, if you are playing that team a third time, or do you ever consider how would you ever maybe go about maybe adding a little, but you know, you also want to stay true to yourself? Where is that balance?
Man, I think that's a very individual and specific question to not only team but coach. I'll do it again. I'll tell you what I did. I'm not saying it's right. I was very reluctant. I kind of had a hard time, like, with this in my head, like in a game that's probably, for us in Texas, we play a lot of games, 30 plus game of the year in the playoffs. What do I trust more? Something we've been doing for thousands of hours, or something I put in on Thursday and we play on Friday? Like, I don't trust that that will happen that well. And I had smart players and players that could, you know, absorb information pretty well. And, you know, it might've been a good move for me to do a little more of that, but I personally did not feel comfortable with a lot of new information when the season's on the line. I
Mhm.
felt more comfortable with tried and true things that we know that work, that we can do in our sleep by now. So again, some coaches just feel more comfortable if they're bringing an element of surprise to the game. They're bringing an element of unpredictability to the game. That what makes them feel comfortable. I think that's an individual thing. I just wanted that security blanket, if you will, of like, man, we can run this offense and this defense. I know we can do this by now. Like this is what we do. Now, do we need to review some things? Do we need to clean it up? We're playing a great team in the third round of the playoffs. So like our movement on the flight of the pass just matters that much more. So we're gonna like really ramp that up in the practice preparations for those games. But it's really the same things, really, you know. And like I was talking to a coach this week about if I was playing blackjack with my broke college buddies for $10 a hand or something, like $5 a hand or something, or I was some high roller playing blackjack for $1 million pot, I still, you know, hit on 15. I still hold on 18. It's the same game.
Mhm.
It's the same game. The stakes are higher. But I don't need to talk about that. Everyone knows that. Everyone in the town knows that. It's a bracket. There's no loser side to it. So we don't have to talk about that. So I felt more comfortable with what we do well and what's proven to work for us in the 30 plus game sample size we've already accumulated. I know there are coaches who like to bring out some surprise strategy or something. That's what makes them feel prepared and like they have an advantage. I get that. But I personally, if you're asking me in this interview, that's what I tended to not do a whole lot of changing.
I think the most that we had success with or have had success with is something that you're changing that's minor that doesn't necessarily completely change what you do as a
Yeah,
team or what have you done the entire
a
year.
new
So whether
entry, a
that's
new I don't
right,
know, something like that. Yeah,
right. If we're talking about like new systems, there's probably not enough time for my guys. There hasn't been enough time for my guys to pick that up and run that to the level of us running what we've been running the entire year. But if it's something we have had success changing minor things, but the minor changes never went against what we already
yeah.
did. So for instance, you know, we actually did run this last year. We ran a box and one and had never run a box and one before, but we had run matchup zone and then we had also run
Hmm.
man, and we didn't change any of the principles within what we did
Yeah.
in that box and one. Um, you know, if you're
So
going
you were able to sort of use that already, absorb knowledge to sort of
yes, there was
accelerate the yeah.
and we made that clear to them, like, you're still doing this as if we were in our zone. You're still
Hmm.
doing this as if you were in your man or whatever. And that there was enough similarity where it didn't cause confusion. But you know, if you go from being a team that's no middle and then you become a pack line team the week before the playoffs start, I think that's probably what we're kind of referring to.
I made this mistake too when I was my first year in the playoffs as a young, very young head coach. I did feel that like maybe we need to add this or put in some new plays or sets or something and spend some practice time doing that. And then we get to the game, the actual game's going on, and it's a close game. Uh, Loud Jim, good opponent, obviously, and you know, the game ends. We lost. This is my first years in the playoffs as a young head coach. We got in the bracket and lost in the first round. Um, and then when I looked back on the game, I never even called some of the stuff that I put in
Yeah.
because when I got in the heat of the battle, what was my natural inclination was our base offense, our base defense. None of the little tricks I put in on Tuesday and Wednesday leading up to the game. They were on my sheet. They were in my brain. We worked on them, but like when we got into the fog of war, if you will, I just didn't even do it.
Mhm.
So I took that lesson forward. Like I'm not wasting that time anymore. But that's just me. Some people want that, and that's cool.
Yeah. This isn't necessarily adding anything new,
Mm-hmm.
but younger coaches or coaches who may have forgotten, or maybe they didn't have a close game all year. But what would you suggest coaches have kind of in their bag for end of game special situations? Like, what were your go-to? I need to have these so that my team is prepared for this scenario.
I think one of the things that I get asked about a lot, and I just had a conversation about it this week, of sort of like protecting a lead, whether you're shot clock or not. That certainly dramatically impacts the way that strategically plays out. But like, you get a lead, you get into the fourth quarter. I kind of like wanted our team to be able to protect that lead without sort of like going to like a full on delay game or something like that. So my advice would be, but you've probably done this in like a meaningful regular season game already, but like, we tended to have, something ready to do to sort of like, okay, we've got an 8-point lead, a 10-point lead. We're not going to shut it down, but we're kind of like, we're okay with a little false motion, a little dummy offense before we, two sides before we to sort of now put the pressure on our opponent to put us on the free throw line, and let's trust that, or put us on, or maybe they're feeling the desperation of the impending loss, and they start to extend their defense, and we can, back cut them or something like that, to sort of like play that strategy of like, we've got a lead now, let's really put the screws to the opponent. So that would be one piece of advice. Inevitably in the playoffs, as you advance, because good teams that have really good players go deep in the playoffs. So inevitably you're going to face a really good player. And I would say, be thinking about your star rules for when you're going to play a player that's, big postman that dominates in the paint, or a really, really good guard or something like that. Like, what sort of strategic accommodations are we going to make, if any, with facing an outstanding player? Because I mean, like I said, like that's who gets in the play. That's who goes down the road in the playoffs. Teams with really good players. So, so those are some things I might advise.
I would suggest something full court. You got to get the ball up full court.
Okay, yeah, some special situation stuff.
Situation type things, even side out of bounds type stuff. You mentioned the star player.
Yeah.
Are you a kind of anything to win type coach? Are you doing any junk defenses, anything like that?
I personally didn't, but I've seen it done with both failure and success. So, but I mean, it would be smart to have a plan for that. If you are coaching a team that's sort of like one dominant player heavy, right? Like, we've got this really good player and then it drops off. So we are susceptible to seeing a box and one or some sort of full denial or something like that. So it would behoove you, if that is you, to be thinking about that possibility of being done to you as well.
Yeah. How about any press break ideas? I had a conversation on Twitter and then also in person with somebody this week, but being prepared for different presses, what would your suggestion be, whether that's man, zone?
I think you brought up a good point a moment ago of like, getting into a special situation against a full court man press where you just got to get the ball in bounds, and it's, you're a 3-point lead or something. And so it's sort of precarious, meaning you turn it over trying to get the ball in bounds. You put the game in jeopardy. If you successfully get it in bounds, you're probably just going to get fouled, go down and win the game at the free throw line. So having something there would be smart. Sometimes you see some touchdown plays and things like that coaches use. but again, I don't want to repeat myself too much, but like there's universalities to zone presses. So I didn't really, we have, an entry man, a player behind him, a middle, a long diagonal, and a player above him with whatever zone press we see. So
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really change much there. It would be sort of like situational, getting the ball in bounds, things like that I might kind of get in my bag, if you will, of special situation things.
I feel like it's one of those things where over the course of even how long our show's been going, the advantage of coaching the way that we've kind of discussed during that time prepares you for these situations. And coaches typically get themselves in trouble when they're so focused on, this is how I beat the box on one. This is how I beat a man press. This is how I beat a zone press. And it's this one way of doing it rather than teaching them the concepts of teaching your players how to play the game.
Yeah.
That it soon becomes overwhelming because at some point you don't prepare for something that you face if you're that specific.
Yeah. And it goes back to what I said earlier too, man. I just had a lack of trust personally with things that we just put in right before a game versus things that we've been doing for years, possibly. Right.
I talked earlier.
I mean, if there is a time, I guess, to kind of, we got to whiteboard something up or draw something up, it's probably the playoffs. So
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. I talked earlier about the scouting side of things, the scouting component of it. How much were you comfortable with? What made you feel most prepared, or maybe what made your team or just your staff most prepared?
I would say this would, again, I don't want to repeat myself too often, but I tried to mimic what we did for our district opponents with playoff opponents, where it just felt very routine to our players. We get our scouting report on our next opponent this day, and it's the same format. It's not any thicker or thinner than it was when we, were back in December or whatever. It's so I tried to do that. Now, of course, as a coach, when the season's on the line, you've got a little bit more nervous energy, perhaps. So I might have watched a little bit more film if I can gather it, and a little bit more to get myself to subside to subdue that nervous energy that I'm feeling. But as far as like what is rolled out to our team, again, fight for the routine. That's what I did. Same format, went into the district team 10 miles down the road that when we made it to regionals or deeper or whatever,
Yeah. This is
same thing, same personnel matters, the same.
Yeah.
We're just facing probably better players as a whole, like it's just, I think that, again, I feel like when they go home into their parents are like, big game Friday night. It's the regionals, or like the school's all abuzz. There's a pep rally, and I don't have to be the one to add to the outsized importance of the game. That's everyone else. I always felt like my job was to bring them back to like, it's just another game, girls. Just another game, guys. Like let's focus on our preparation, what we do, nothing changes like that. That was my approach.
Yeah.
As much
this
as I
one
could control it.
Right. This one is kind of to the finality of things, but 99 or whatever % of the teams out there are going to be the ones that are on the losing end. How do you handle the locker room at the end?
Well, yeah, that is tough. That's a tough one. I think what I always did was give thanks, give thanks to the players and give thanks to their efforts, their dedication, and their loyalty. There are options now. If you want to be a basketball player, you can do it at your neighborhood public high school. You can do it at a charter school, a private school, You can transfer if you're in college. Like, so I give thanks to their loyalty, their dedication, to their I asked a lot of my players, like as most coaches do, as far as like not only time commitment but physical commit. Like there's like pain involved, and there's like sacrifice. So and really, like, I think it's important to remember that for a lot of especially the high school coaches watching, that this is it for a lot of the players. So be sensitive to that. But above all, I just gave thanks. Certainly not the time to replay the game. It's over. No one, So above all, I would just be gracious and thankful to your players for their service to the program and their dedication to the program. I mean, we all as coaches, we all have a dream of winning a state championship, a national championship, or whatever the case may be, whoever's listening, but you're going to get another crack at it in 9 months. This is it for them. So just be gracious and thankful for their dedication, and let them know how much you appreciate that dedication. And then, if there's tears, there's tears. If there's not, people process emotion different ways. So it's just raw and real, and there's no avoiding it. But give thanks, man. Just be appreciative.
Yeah, I think that's especially important for the seniors, the ones that won't be back, and then for the ones that the potential for them to be back, thanking them as well, but also helping them understand like this isn't the end of the road. And I think like how you handle it there at the end can have an impact on how things move on to the next. And we've talked about postseason player evaluations, and then I know a lot of, it seems like more and more teams are doing in the summertime, and it's almost becoming a like year-round thing. And
no doubt,
if we're really in it for the long haul as coaches, then I think that we need to keep that long-term perspective, even in that moment where you are disappointed.
Yeah, and there's a time for that, to pivot toward the next season. And man, I've been a part of playoff games where the loss was both, we maybe were a Cinderella team, or like we were a good team, but we got into the regionals or regional final or something, and we're playing like a USA Today. We probably weren't going to beat that team. So there was sort of like not necessarily a happy to be there attitude, but like, what a great season to get. But then there was there was a couple of years I had the shoe on the other foot where we were the favorite and got beat. And that really sucks. Pardon my French, but that's a bad feeling where you're met with the rawness of, we didn't finish this. It didn't happen. So I've been on teams that were like Cinderella teams. One year we go 4 rounds deep. 2 of the 3 wins before that 4th round loss were literally at the buzzer, including our first playoff game right out of the bat. So we hit a buzzer beater to win that game, or we would have been out. The next game we won pretty handily over a team who had a great record. I didn't have any clue that we would beat them as solidly as we did. And in the 3rd game we win another buzzer beater that, we're a rim out or whatever from being done. We get into the 4th game and we're going against the number 1 team in the state that's got a player that's going to University of Texas, and like, we're just like average kids, really, like, I'm like, we're happy to be here. We lost the game. Yeah, we maybe we won 1 game too many because we got rolled by that team, but our players felt like that season was, wow, that loss felt different than, say, the loss in one of the years where I had a number 1 ranked team. We lost in overtime in regionals. We were picked to win state. like that feels those same result, but the difference was mighty.
I think disappointing losses at the end don't necessarily mean an unsuccessful season.
No,
And
not at all.
even if it did kind of fizzle out at the end, like you should have won the game at the end, having the perspective again as the whole thing as a whole, and hopefully you're measuring your success by something more than just the scoreboard.
Yeah, and hopefully the journey was fun too.
Right.
Hopefully the process along the way was rewarding. Um, you know, it's hard to enjoy something if all you are is looking, at this sort of binary possibility of outcome. Either we've won it all or we were failure. I think it's really hard to enjoy the process if that's your outlook. But it's hard for that not to be the outlook in society, and for those of you who may be listening who have a number one or top ranked team, it's hard for that. It's hard to, when the whole community and everyone's like, they got to win it. This is a championship level team. This is their year. It's Super Bowl or bust. It's state tournament or bust or something like that. It's hard to enjoy that process, but I think coaches that are talented coaches, way more talented than I ever was as a coach, do that.
Yeah. So nearing the end here, for some it will end in joy, others may end in a little bit of disappointment, but still this time of year is really exciting. We see, even once seasons are over for high school coaches, the month of February and March especially, making sure that they know where to find you, because this, like I said, is typically one of the most interactive filled months, 4 weeks, 5 weeks of the whole season. So kind of direct them towards where you want them to go.
Randy at radiusathletics.com. If you ever want to email me and talk playoffs, talk preparation, if your season's over and you're already pivoting toward next year, I think this is a great time to connect. So yeah, just email me, Radius Athletics on Twitter. You can find me there, radiusathletics.com. Contact me through that if you'd like as well. This is the time of year when I really miss coaching. Sometimes I don't, but this is the time of year where I really do miss the excitement that advancing through the bracket can create. It was always very fun for me and some of my best memories. So,
Yeah, Randy's got a lot of great observations that he usually makes throughout the tournament, and some things that he points out that are really great. So be sure to check out him at Radius Athletics. I'm less on the observations and more on the X's and O's. So be sure to follow us both. You'll get a lot of varying information and ideas. Hopefully that will help you in your program down the road. Appreciate everyone who joined us this week. If you missed any part of the live show, you can go back and watch. Just search Hoops Forum on YouTube. You'll find the full version of the show there at Radius Athletics YouTube page. If you're more inclined to listen, just go to any podcast platform and search A Quick Timeout, and there you'll find the audio version of the show. For Randy Sherman, I'm Tony Miller. We'll talk to you again next time on Hoops Forum.